Salutations, folks, and good evening, afternoon, morning, whatever time of day you're tuning in. This is the Hit Play. We are the Hit Players.
I don't say that.
Merch coming soon. We took a little bit of a hiatus. Your boy got the Rona, so we couldn't see or talk to one another really for like a week.
A while.
So, but life is good. Life is good. We're back with another podcast, a one that we teased last time, and then proceeded not to do it. What happens? Our favorite movies of 2021.
Not specific to movies that came out in 2021.
So movies that we watched either for the first time in 2021 or movies that we have watched again for the first time in a long time.
Yes. I just now realized none of the movies I chose came out in 2021.
I have a couple.
Okay.
And actually, I don't think I do, actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
No.
Anyways, so before we begin, let's talk about movies that we watched for the first time, because we watched a lot of movies this year.
We watched a lot
just
of
for this podcast.
Yep.
So let's talk about potentially some movies
Stuff that we talked about already.
that we've already talked about.
Yep.
And we'll link those if I'm not lazy. I'll link those here. But regardless.
The first one that comes to my mind was Tenet, since that was the first episode.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that.
Was Tenet. Which was, I like that movie personally. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed it, so it's been interesting.
You don't think Nolan's a hack anymore, or he was never talented? I don't know. I'm reading a lot of Facebook comments.
Yeah, it's interesting to see post Tenet, the hype around Nolan's name has split the internet into the people who are like, we're still excited because Nolan's attached to it, and the other half are like,
his last two movies were garbage.
They're they're estranged from Nolan now.
Yeah.
Regardless, I enjoyed Tenet, and I'm glad that I saw it. Having seen every single one of his movies building up to it.
Did you feel like it was a culmination?
No, not at all.
Career?
And that was why I did that, was because it put it into the context of, okay, he's done all these amazing things in the past. If he runs out of ideas, it's understandable. And then to see Tenet and be like, yeah, he's
still got it.
He's kind of still got it, but he's also kind of just, we get it. Time is interesting. Move on.
Yeah, which is going to be interesting now that the Oppenheimer biopic has been announced. Him going back to more an intimate.
Hopefully.
Fingers crossed on the intimate.
Whether or not he will detonate and a nuclear bomb is still on the table.
Yeah. I'm glad you enjoyed Tenet. What else?
Full Metal Jacket was the other one that I came up with.
You saw that one for the first time
last year? I
saw that
one for the first time for the podcast. I kind of didn't know what to expect going into it because there are super famous scenes from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's almost
like
entirely the boot camp.
First half, yeah.
So I knew like that just by like cultural reference, but watching it all in context, I actually enjoyed it quite a lot because it felt like more of a statement on the 60s as an era than it did a war movie.
Yeah.
And I wasn't expecting that going into it.
Did you appreciate the tonal shift?
Yes.
Once they get out of boot camp and actually go to Vietnam?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I think was...
Because I think I've read people are split on that. I like talking to my dad. I don't mean to call out my dad, but my dad really likes the first half and he doesn't really care for the second half that much.
I can see it.
Which, understandable because the first half is so iconic.
Yeah.
And it's like every other war movie after it has copied that to some degree.
Yeah. Well, what can you do? I think I prefer the war sections just because they were more interesting. I hadn't seen that.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where it was like the boot camp stuff felt like I had seen it before because I had seen it before. Whereas all the war stuff, no one copies that.
Yeah.
So that was all fresh and new for me. So definitely that one I enjoyed plenty. What about you?
Well, the first one that comes to my mind is Zodiac.
Zodiac.
David Fincher.
That was right. That was the
Yeah.
one you hadn't seen.
Yeah,
before.
that was
I was so
that
excited
was an
for you to watch
immediate instant classic for me.
for sure.
So I had heard a lot about it. There was
Mostly
a lot of
from me.
hype
Mostly
heading
from
into
me.
it. And then I actually sat down and we watched it during the pod, and I was like, "Oh, this is so much better." Because I think for me, I'm not a big fan of true crime, even though I read Killers of the Flower Moon. Shout out Killers of the Flower Moon. But yeah, I just don't care a lot for true crime. It
Same.
just freaks me out.
Oh, does it?
It just, I don't know. It's just weird to think people like that exist in our world. But to actually like, for it to be from the perspective of the guy trying to piece together everything and like this giant puzzle that's missing a huge piece. To me, that was the cool part. Was just like, you have everything else of the puzzle except this one big piece that somehow everybody missed except for this author.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't even like on a crime beat or anything.
Yeah.
It was just, I don't know. It was cool characterization. It was
very
good acting.
dense movie too.
And there was a lot for a 3-hour movie. Oh, my laptop finally booted.
It's even
Nice.
better too because I know we talked about this in the podcast, but there's a lot in the movie and outside the movie because then when you learn how they made it
Yeah.
and how detailed they were in making it, filming at the location of the actual crime scenes, it's
It's
that
a love
adds to
letter.
it just
It's
as
David
much.
Fincher's love letter
to the Zodiac Killer.
to Palo Alto, to San Fran area.
That's
the
probably
Bay
more
Area.
accurate than being a love letter
Yeah.
to the Zodiac Killer.
No, not to the Zodiac Killer. It was. Yeah, we talked about that in our pod about how
Go watch that.
he wanted to debunk the mythos and
Yeah.
everything of the Zodiac, and
Especially since David Fincher lived during the Zodiac killings in San Francisco. So, what's another one that comes to mind?
Taxi Driver is another one. No surprise, Martin Scorsese. Everybody follows our podcast.
You were rewatching that, or you saw that?
I saw that for the first time. Everybody knows I like Martin Scorsese.
Mhm.
That's one of his early hits and one of his iconic hits. It's probably in everybody's top 5 in terms of Martin Scorsese movies.
Yeah.
I
Shout out to
don't
Licorice
think I would-
Pizza, which had a Taxi Driver reference.
It
in
did. It did. It did. It had a lot of references. That one, yeah. That was a good one. I won't spend too much time on Martin Scorsese. I'm trying to think. Any others that are coming off the top of your head?
So I
Curious
also,
Case of Benjamin Button. Shout out Fincher.
Oh, shut up. We're not talking about that again. I believe Moonlight was the other one that I had on my list when we talked about coming of age movies, because
Yes.
I really enjoy that movie a lot. Mostly stylistically,
Mhm.
I just think it looks amazing, and I love how it evolves as it shows the 3 different stages of one
Yeah.
guy's life that
Yeah.
I really enjoy. And that's always a good movie to watch. It's one of those, like, it's such a small self-contained movie. I love stuff like that where it's like, it just seems like it's in
It's
its
not
own
the end of the
but
world.
it's
Conflicts,
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate movies
that
like
I
that.
enjoy. But those were I only had 6 movies, and 3 were the ones we had already talked about, and now I have the other 3. So if you have one more,
I
shoot.
mean, Boogie Nights.
You saw that for the first time.
Master. I saw that
Yeah.
one for the first time. I mean,
The entirety of the Paul Thomas
Anderson's discography, really, except for
his discography.
not discography, filmography. Sorry. I'm trying to think. I've seen all of Nolan's movies, so that's not a big thing. Yeah, no, that's it, really.
Yeah.
Those are the only ones.
We talked about a lot, and we didn't talk about a lot at the same time.
I know, right? Well, it's hard because we talked about certain directors.
Yeah.
So it's hard to be like, I enjoyed Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, we like David Fincher, Christopher Nolan, and Paul Thomas Anderson.
A lot.
I don't know if you could tell.
A lot. All right, let's get into movies that we haven't talked about.
Okay.
Um,
I'll let you go first since I went first here.
yes. I'll bring one up, and
Yeah.
it's in the similar category as Moonlight. American Graffiti. I watched that for the first time. I think I briefly mentioned it when we talked about Lucas, but I feel like I should talk about it more.
I think, didn't you watch that for the coming of age?
I watched it for Lucas,
Mm.
and then it just so happened to also go in. I guess I did talk about it when we did Coming of Age. I forgot. Never mind. Yeah, add that to that list then. So what's a movie you want to talk about then?
So the first one that I thought of, which I mentioned in passing as a reference in the Paul Thomas Anderson podcast, I talked about how he was very influenced by filmmaker Robert Altman,
Mhm.
who in the 60s and 70s was this kind of like is super influential director who made art house kind of movies, but they were like super popular. And his most famous one is probably MASH, which most people know because of the TV show based on the movie, which is not actually based on the movie. Nevertheless, in name, people know of it. But the movie Nashville, the Robert Altman movie Nashville, which was insanely influential, Paul Thomas Anderson, stylistically, because Altman loves long takes and stuff like that, but also just like narratively, because Altman loves ensemble casts. And a lot of Anderson's early films were just massive ensemble cast pieces, like Boogie Nights and Magnolia.
Mhm.
And Nashville was really interesting to watch. Because I had heard so much about it just through Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah.
And I had seen The Player, which is another Robert Altman movie. If you go to film school, you've probably heard of The Player before. But, okay, so Nashville is about country music. And I don't listen to country music. And what I thought...
Unless he's in the car with me.
Unless I'm in the car with Isaac.
And I'm
yes.
driving.
And what was so interesting about the movie, too, is that they play the songs in full. So the entire soundtrack to the movie is written by the actors. So they wrote the music themselves, and then they perform it in the movies, but, like, it's entire songs. So it's a very long movie because there's, like, 10 or something songs that gets played throughout this entire thing. And as I don't like country music, there are certain times where I'm just like, how much time is left in this song? Can we get this over? And how long is this scene going to be? There's literally a concert scene where they perform songs one after another.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this is so fascinating because it does nothing narratively. It's just watching people. It's like a concert movie at this point. And I honestly, like, kind of didn't think you could do that and get away with that, which I know is like what everybody says about Altman is when you watch a Robert Altman movie, it's like seeing something you've never seen before. But I genuinely watching this movie was like, I didn't think anybody would even care to do that. Why would you just show people playing music if it served no narrative purpose?
Yeah.
But this entire movie is just that. On top of that, there's the usual Altman stuff, like the fact that the conversations are so incredibly casual that he will purposely have people talk over one another as they're speaking to each other. And then you're like listening and you're just like trying to parse out like which person you should pay attention to. It's really weird to watch on your first watch through. And I'm also sure that there's a lot of like inside like country music references to the industry that I just didn't understand. Like I remember reading through the Wikipedia page on it afterwards and they were like, oh yeah, this character is inspired by Dolly Parton. And I was like, I'm going to be honest, didn't know that. Couldn't have told. Had no idea. Nevertheless though, I would still recommend Nashville because it is a interesting, it's a very accessible movie. It is not at all like a weird, I say that it's like stuff I've never seen before. It's not like an art house kind of movie or anything like that by any imagination. It's just an interesting use of film as a narrative medium. I don't know. I don't really have a condensed way to describe it.
Did you watch this in preparation for Paul Thomas Anderson?
Yes.
Okay.
Because he had talked about being super influenced by this movie before. I had seen The Player, so I knew Altman already. So I watched this one.
Just to kind of get where
just
he's
to kind of be like,
inspired,
okay.
but
yeah. And I can at least say that going from this to them watching Boogie Nights and Magnolia,
you can see it.
I can kind of see it. For the era that Altman was in, that there are certain like cinematography techniques that haven't really been invented by that point, or that you're just not.
What era are we talking about for the audience?
I believe so. Nashville
the
came
people
out
at
in
home,
75.
for you people. 75.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're into country music, or if you're just into music in general, I would recommend it. But interestingly enough, I think if you also want a really politically relevant movie, mostly because it deals with the music industry, and art.
How much of a sham it really is.
it's really interesting. Shout out to NFTs. It's really interesting
Oh, Lord,
because
here we
the
go.
ending of the movie is one of those things where I was like, the ending put the rest of the movie in context, where I was then like, okay, this is why this movie is considered so influential.
Mhm.
This is why people look at this movie and be like, yeah, you'll sit through 3 hours of country music because by the end of it, you can watch the news and be like, oh, yeah, that's what Altman was talking about. Not going to spoil it because I'm going to force you to watch a 3-hour movie on country music. Nevertheless, I
You're
thought it was a
gonna
really
do
good
it.
movie. And it's Altman. He's extremely influential.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys where you'll watch him and then you'll see him in everyone else, you know? So, by all means, yeah, I'd recommend that one. All right. Now that your
Nice.
computer is done rebooting.
Well, my first one that comes to my mind, and it's a movie that did come out in 2021. What are we, 2022? It's 2021.
We're doing last year, yeah.
This pandemic is taking a toll
I know.
on all of us. The Green Knight.
I have not seen that one yet.
Fuck, I forgot the director's name. But I did like it. I had a lot of hype for this. You know,
You did?
I'm not a big A24 like, oh my god, A24 can't make anything
David
bad.
Lowery.
David Lowery, thank you. He made a ghost story in Pete's Dragon. But I'm not a big A24 like, I don't
Buff.
want to say film
Snob.
snob.
Hold on, A24 fan and film snob. That Venn diagram is a complete circle.
It's not a Venn diagram. Shout out to all our film snobs watching this. But yeah, I was just so interested by an Arthurian or Turian. A Tale of the Night of the Round Table. We'll say that. Actually being brought to the picture.
Did you read the original poem in
No,
preparation?
I did not. No. I thought about it, but then I was like, you know what? I'm not really good with Old English. Still haven't gotten through the
Fair
Divine
enough.
Comedy, so.
That is,
Yeah, I was just so interested in that, and you know, I remember reading like Beowulf and all the Arthur's tales, not the Green Knight, but you know,
Beowulf is not Arthur, but close enough.
well, you know what I mean, like
I
the
know what
old,
you mean, yeah.
the old,
Old poetry.
yeah. Shut up. But that just always was interesting to me, those kind of stories, and it's always cool when a filmmaker's willing to take on old myths and legends and kind of tell a modern story with it. And I think they did this well. I think a lot of people didn't like that, judging from the 60 whatever meta score on
Fair enough, yeah.
IMDb. Even my I guess my now ex-girlfriend, she even was like, what the hell is going on? Like multiple times throughout the movie. And I was just visually, my jaw was on the floor. Just
What did they do visually then?
he was able to do. It was just cool to see just the myths, just fables, just come to life in front of my. Because you always read about, you know, like, oh, he looks into fire and he sees, you know, skulls staring back at him and this and that, and there's giants walking around him. But to actually see like Sir Gawain walking and there's actual giants around him, and visually just the lighting. Like there's a scene where he's in a lake. Spoiler alert, and it just immediately snaps to red, and I'm like, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Just the actual like technicality of having to actually shoot a scene like that underwater is pretty dope. And for like an actor to have the wherewithal to like be drowning but also interact with you know what's going on, because he's trying to find something at the bottom of the lake. So for him to actually have to interact and to be an actor, I thought was pretty cool. This isn't a screenplay 101. You're not gonna find this on an Instagram page, but I just thought it was cool, just the way it visually told the
Bringing
story.
back
It is
the
a
past.
long. I will admit, it is a slog to get through, and if you like action and dialogue, this is not your movie. I'll be honest with you. There's a lot of pretty shots, and it looks cool, but it's definitely not for everybody.
What do you think about Dave Patel as an actor?
I like him. I like him a lot. I've liked him ever since I've seen him in Skins.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
You're a big Skins fan. I was thinking
I
Slumdog Millionaire.
am a pretty
Yeah.
big Skins fan. So yeah, I've been following him since Skins, really, since I watched Skins in high school.
Is
so
he British? Oh, he's British.
Um,
I had no idea. That's kind of cool.
I like everything. I like everything I see him in. He's really good in Slumdog. He's good in this. Surprisingly, he plays very well with he's across Alicia Vikander and Joel Edgerton.
Joel Edgerton.
So
Now, do they speak Middle English?
no,
in
they
this, or
speak
normal English.
I mean, you know, they use multiple syllable words to make it seem like they're speaking.
Yeah.
Like, you know how Game of Thrones or you know any other high fantasy does it. But
nice. Not
it's a
bad.
good watch. It's
That came out pretty early, I say early. It came
August.
out. Yeah,
I
August,
think.
July.
August, July, something like that. Yeah. So,
That feels like it was early
honestly,
last year.
yeah. I know when I had to go through my list of movies that came out in 2021, I was like, nothing came out prior to July.
It feels like it. Yeah.
I'm sure there is, and I'm sure somebody's gonna get offended that we're not bringing up their favorite movie that came out.
Yeah.
But sorry.
Sucks.
What's another one for you?
All right. So this is a movie that actually came out in 2005. Like I said, spoiler alert, I didn't actually end up picking any movie that came out in 2021. Mostly because it was difficult to go and see movies in 2021
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
Regardless,
You're telling me you didn't go see Space Jam 2?
I sadly did not. No. Well, I don't know if that's sad. I think I'm glad I did not. No. Okay. I picked a 2005 French film called Cachet.
French film.
Or maybe it's Cash. Yes. It was directed by Michael Haneke, who I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the podcast. He's one of my favorite directors. He is a very, very solid director, is how I would describe him. He's actually very influential on me, too, so I have a lot to say about him. Regardless, Cachet is an interesting movie. It's labeled as a psychological thriller, but it's more like an allegory, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, kind of like Animal Farm in some way. Well, not like strictly an allegory. It's metaphorical, I should say. It's about a man and his wife who begin receiving videotapes of themselves filmed from a distance.
Oh.
And they spend a lot of time tracking down the potential
Suspect, for lack of a better word,
who is behind this, and it leads them to an old childhood friend or an old childhood relation from the husband, and this is a weird movie. I say that because, first off, it's very French, and I say it's metaphorical. It's more or less entirely a metaphor for for France's relationship with Algeria, because France colonized Algeria
right?
back when we were doing that for some reason, and
Got to get
so
those
they have
raw
a
resources.
they have a very tenuous and strained relationship with that entire country, and there's a lot of Algerians in France, and to say that they are treated like French citizens would be a lie, because they historically have not been. And this movie more or less deals with how that colonization impacts France from the perspective of quote-unquote upper-class French people who, you know, don't have to deal with the poor people because they're rich. So it's really more so a movie about French society than it is about a husband and woman getting these video cameras. And once you see it through that way, as I did after I watched the movie, reading the Wikipedia article, then it was not so much the slow-moving psychological thriller that it's said to be. It then became more of a like, okay, that's why this was included, and this was shown, and so on and so forth. And even the ending of the movie, where an Algerian man talks to the guy's kid, but it's filmed from such a distance away that you can't even hear what they're talking about. You're just like, that's how the movie ends? But then you take it into the context of literally everything else in the movie, and you're just like,
It's happened.
Understandable. Yeah. Really, the reason I liked it is just because Michael Haneke is such an amazing director. He does so many things that I would want to say that I want other people to do them, but I know that that's just impossible. Like, for example, he almost never uses non-diegetic sound. Even music comes from, like,
Somewhere.
the characters listening to something in the movie. And I just love that effect because he really will then he pays attention to, like, the sound of things.
Yeah.
Just like characters walking, or like how the knock on the door sounds, or the sound of a door closing. Like, those are the kind of things that are like the soundtrack to these movies, and that I love. I also rewatched another Haneke movie called The White Ribbon, and that one has more like a normal soundtrack, I believe. But that's a fantastic movie too. But that's a bit too heavy to get into on this. That you're talking about, yeah, the entire history of Germany over there. Another thing Haneke does in this movie that I absolutely love. This guy, dude, he's such a smart filmmaker. I don't know how he thinks of this stuff, but it's like, because it's the videotapes of the family receiving, right? Like, they're receiving videotapes of themselves.
Right.
But he cuts between the two in such a way that at certain points, and because, like I said, so many shots are filmed from so far away, you never really get the sense of, like, the whole movie basically just ends up being filmed like the videotapes that they're receiving, to the point where he'll cut back and forth between the two, and he does all the tricks you would think, where an entire scene will play out and you won't think anything of it, and then it will pause, and then it will cut to them in their living room watching the tape on their TV.
Damn.
And it's just like, there's such smart use of that, like, concept to like use that as transitions between scenes, that I just thought was so cool. Michael Haneke is such a good director. I don't know.
Where can folks watch this movie?
So it's actually on Criterion Collection, and it should be on their streaming service.
Shout out to Criterion.
I watched it on Amazon.
Shout out. Do we
No,
want to shout out
don't shout
Amazon?
out Amazon.
I was gonna say.
But I would recommend, if you can find it on Criterion, watch it on Criterion Collection. And Michael Haneke is a fantastic director. I love that guy. He's so good. One thing I love about him too, a lot like, he's actually kind of similar to David Fincher in that. Remember how David Fincher had that interview where he was like, it's not about what you do, it's about what you don't do? Haneke is the same way.
I like that. I like when directors do that.
He's the same way, where he's like, I don't know if I've ever seen a handheld shot in a single Haneke movie. He almost never does that. Interestingly enough, too, almost all of his films are shot on sets and not on locations. And that's really interesting, too. But he's just such a smart director when it comes to just making, like I said, self-contained movies that just work.
Yeah.
Although his movies tend to be very metaphorical and philosophical. And if you're into that kind of stuff, you'll like it. If you like history, I think you'll like it. I would also recommend The White Ribbon if you want something much longer and much more heavy.
If you want to get messed up in the brain.
Regardless. Yeah. Haneke, I've said this about Terrence Malick, but I'll say this about Haneke. He's one of those directors where after I watch one of his movies, I then feel like everything looks like it's in a Haneke movie, you know? Like, just the, you know, like, looking around, it will be like, that could be a shot in a Haneke film right there, you know? Seriously, that's what his movies make me think. Like, they put me in that mindset of, how does he see the world, you know? And that I love. So that is probably one of the more niche recommendations I will have for people.
Pretty niche. It's French.
It is French. I'm sorry. Regardless, I enjoyed it.
Hey, man, you're entitled to what you like.
That's true, yeah. All right, what you got?
So I'm gonna shout out one of the greatest movies of all time, Kissing Booth 3. No, I'm just kidding.
House of Gucci.
Oh God, don't get me started on that movie. So I'm gonna go a little more low key and maybe a more well known
Ooh.
and animated.
Ooh. I enjoy animated.
Do you remember when Shia LaBeouf was in a animated movie about penguins surfing?
Surf's Up?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I watched that the other day about a month
Literally,
ago.
really?
Yeah, it was right before Christmas.
Nice.
Holds up surprisingly well for being a 2000 and whatever animated movie. It was like, I was surprised on how much I laughed audibly, just being like, ha. There was more than just like a
nice,
like a exhale through the nose. It was like actual funny to me, and it was surprisingly well. Like, it's not a stupid kids movie where there's really no plot.
I have something to say about that. But
where like, like kids movies sometimes there's not really a whole. I'm not gonna sit here and critique kids movies. Or
kids movies suck.
But sometimes it's just a whole lot of nothing going on.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's the point of making this?
Yeah.
But this movie actually has like meaning to it and a theme, and I'm not sitting here saying that I was emotionally moved by Surf's Up, but it was cool to see. Like, to me, that's what makes a movie stand out and continue to age. So I mean, it's why people talk about freaking Toy Story
and Shrek.
So many years later. It's because these movies actually mean something.
For sure.
And it's Shia LaBeouf before he went crazy. I think this is like peak Shia LaBeouf. Actually, I think this is either before Transformers or after the first one came out or something like that.
2007. I don't know when the first.
I think the first Transformers came out in 2007 too. So it's always Deschanel is in it. Jeff Bridges is in it. Freaking
2007.
Napoleon Dynamite's in it. It's like really well casted in terms of big name actors, at least at that time. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna sit here and talk about Surf's Up for 30 minutes, but
I will. Surf's Up, in my opinion, has the coolest animation of any 3D animation movie. What I love about
it's DreamWorks, right?
It is Sony. Actually.
Sony, okay.
Yeah, Sony. So
that's right, because Happy Feet was DreamWorks. These movies came out the same year.
I see.
Anyways, continue. Sorry.
Man, penguins were really popular in 2007. What's going on with that? It's so interesting to see how Surf's Up has had no impact on animation whatsoever, because
despite the fact that it's probably aged the best out of every movie
not only has it aged the best
come out since then,
this movie is actually unnecessarily very technically innovative. So what they did was when they animated the scenes, just making the rigging for them, they made them 3-dimensional, like actually 360 degrees, because in a 3D program you have your camera that you can actually control and operate.
Yeah.
They had a motion capture camera in that 360 space that they could play just the rigging, just the models, and then with their motion tracking camera they can move that around in the animated space. And when you watch the movie, that gives it this
it's documentary feel.
Yeah, like the reason why it looks like it's handheld camera, it's not animated that way. It's actually shot handheld camera, just with a motion tracking camera.
Yeah.
But instead of humans, they're tracking the actual animation as it's playing live. And that is so incredibly cool. Okay, you guys know I love handheld camera. And we put it in anything.
Oh, here we go.
But I am insanely disappointed that did not get picked up. That no one else has done that since.
It also does our favorite camera technique where it zooms.
It zooms in. I love that so much. Yeah.
And not a lot of directors. A lot of people think it's a cheap trick, and I actually disagree. I think it's one of the coolest things you got. It's why Man of Steel is flawless to me. But anyway, Surf's Up.
One of those things where it's like, because with the Lego movie, right, they innovated with colors.
Right.
So that you can actually get a full spectrum of color in the digital camera. That in combination with something like with Surf's Up, you basically could do like a 3D movie that just looked realistic. And Pixar hasn't done it yet. They got pretty close with Toy Story 4, I think. But regardless, Actually, I think
They'll
Encanto,
do it. They'll do it eventually.
there are some shots in Encanto where I'm just like, that's like that. The framing of these shots is just you're there with a camera. That's interesting enough. But yeah, no, Surf's Up. That innovation with the motion tracking camera in 3D, that is like chef's kiss to me. I love that so much. It is so incredibly cool.
Sony actually showed that they were competent at something.
I know, right?
Shout out to Sony. Yeah, no, I was just, in terms of the animation, I just was so interested in seeing how it aged well. And it's beautiful. It's really beautiful because it's, beaches and water and waves and palm trees, and it's like, man, this looks gorgeous for a 2007 movie. Yeah, that Surf's Up.
Nice.
Are you gonna do Bo Burnham?
Were you gonna do Bo Burnham?
No, I wasn't.
Okay.
I haven't seen it yet.
You haven't seen Inside?
No. Maybe it'll make the 2022 list.
All right. So just so I can mention one movie from 2021, Bo Burnham's Inside.
I have seen the clips. The clips you showed me are funny
yes.
though. I do like those. Those are entertaining.
I've loved Bo Burnham ever since his special What, which is like only a second special, but no one's counting. He's a funny comedian in my opinion. I know some people don't like him whatsoever. I know some people
I appreciate that he's willing to be different.
Yeah.
And not just stand in front of a stage and tell jokes.
That's true.
He actually has
That's what I've always liked about him was
to his
theatrics
acts.
of it, right?
Yeah,
Using lighting,
using I do like that.
Mechanics, that I've always enjoyed.
Well, just this, and I don't mean to like copy, but that song Welcome to the Internet, just the actual, I was thinking about it the other day when you showed it to me. I was like, the fact that he's cutting mid-song and also performing the song live, he's obviously not. But it's like, that's impressive for one guy to pull off.
For one guy to have to do that, yeah. He had to move the camera so many times to make that.
It's really, and to have the lighting to always set up, like it's really hard to set up a lighting setup.
It's a really good example of constrained creativity. We're given so few options. He did so much with what he had. Because if you watch the rest of the special, he does a lot with just projection, and I swear he just put like pulsar lights in like the corner, and it just looks so amazing.
Probably.
Nevertheless, for those of you who don't know, it was entirely made by Bo Burnham himself in his room. The only reason I want to give it a shout out is because as time goes on, even just 1 year removed from it, some of the content in it, while in context of the height of the COVID pandemic, like was like, relatable and made sense. Looking back, it's not aged
the best.
Especially because Bo Burnham is talking about certain issues that he himself acknowledges he knows nothing about and shouldn't exactly be commenting on, which I respect him for doing that nonetheless, because not a lot of people will say, hey, this is a problem. I'm just pointing it out. I shouldn't say anything about it. So I respect him for doing that. Nevertheless.
What are some of the problems specifically?
He has one song that, I mean, you should still watch it yourself, but he has one song where he does like a sock puppet, and he talks about like that's just the way the world works, and it's, while he's not wrong, it reads a lot like he just discovered the anti-Oedipus for the first time and is just now writing about like, guys, did you know that like capitalism like destroys the human soul? Who could have thunk? And I'm like, you're late to the party, but I'm glad you're here. He
browses late stage capitalism.
Yeah. I'm like, you're late to the party, Bo, but I'm glad you're here. Don't worry about it. Nevertheless, man. Like for example, there's one shot where he films himself crying, and that's the kind of stuff where it's like, okay, I understand empathetically why he did that, but also just to film yourself doing that.
It's weird.
It's weird.
It's weird.
Regardless, that's just a personal issue I had with it. I just think, because this is one of those things where you watch it and you're just like, yeah, I could do that. If you put me in a room with the camera, I could make something like that. Totally, right? It also has an amazing soundtrack too. There's so many good songs in this. Bo Burnham is a fantastic musician.
Surprisingly, for a comedian.
Not even just surprisingly. I mean, just looking.
Well, I mean,
through,
comedians
that's true.
don't always have the best track record.
He's good at
music.
non-comedic songs too. That's what I liked about that. The song "Funny Feeling" is probably the most famous song from the special, and that song, he has such a way with words. He seriously does. He's so good. You know me. I'm all about like just
Wordplay.
the wordplay and the perfect rhymes, and that song is nothing but just that, and I love it so much for that. So whether it's hit or miss, I would still recommend it. I mean, I would first recommend you watch his older stuff so you have context in what is going on with the guy. Regardless, do you have another movie you'd like to talk about?
Can I shout out a documentary?
Yeah.
I watched the Malice at the Palace documentary. I don't think it was ESPN that did it. I think it was somebody else. I like documentaries because I think they're good time capsules. And it's kind of
Sports documentaries specifically.
sports documentaries
really
especially, yes. And I think it's cool to see, like, when we watched Senna, or when I watched Senna for the first time, which I'll also shout out. It was cool to see F1 at that time, and how it's evolved and contextualizing it within the modern day. And so to see an event like Malice at the Palace, which changed not only the NBA, but the sports world and also just the world in general. The way we view professional athletes at times. It was kind of cool. It was cool to see, because when this happened, I think it was 2000 and, don't tell me. It was 2000 see, the Pistons won that year, so it was 2004.
Correct.
Yeah. It was just, I was only 6 years old at the time, so I didn't know what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
So to go back and actually look at it, and then with my understanding of how the NBA works now, and to see that evolution of the league since that event, and what, everything that happened during the event and whatever happened afterwards, it puts a lot of stuff in a context, not only just in terms of racially how we view, how we view that, but also just how we view these rich people and rich athletes in our lives. I thought it was really interesting. If you're somewhat interested in the sports documentaries, if you're a basketball fan, you've probably already watched this. If you're not a basketball fan, I would recommend it just because it's a good watch to watch. Especially, it's a really well done sports documentary, and it's very easy to get something like that wrong.
Yes.
So yeah, I'll shout out that one.
The hockey equivalent is the documentary Broad Street Bullies, which is about the Philadelphia Flyers and how they came onto the scene and literally beat up everybody, like physically, like even footage of them going into the fans.
That sounds like a Philadelphia
They go in the stands and fight the fans because the fans are booing them. And they still won the Stanley Cups, so there you go. But yeah, nevertheless, I would recommend that one too.
All right, I didn't prepare you for this part, unless you have any more movies you want to shout out.
I got one more, but I'll let you go.
Go. No, go.
I talk too much. All right. Mine is a much older movie. I know I've talked about this on the podcast before. Well, actually, I had to have, because it is directed by Alejandro Jodorowsky, famous for his failed adaptation of Dune.
Yeah.
But before he did that, he made a movie called The Holy Mountain. I know I've talked about this on the podcast before. I absolutely had to. So this probably is not even as niche as Caché, which I said was a very niche pick. But like, The Holy Mountain is a movie about a group of individuals who want to learn the secret to reality. So they travel to the Holy Mountain, where they meet a man who is Jodorowsky. And under his guidance, they travel to the Holy Mountain in order to learn the truth about reality. And along the way, they deal with the things that they assume are reality, things like money and war, conflict, drugs, love, stuff like that. The list goes on. And that is the entire movie. That's the plot summary. That's actually even a spoiler too, because Hodorowski is a very surreal filmmaker. And he's a very symbolic filmmaker. He loves things to just be turned up to 11, and he's like David Lynch on acid.
Yeah.
And that's not a lie, because it says here on the Wikipedia page that he and the actors took LSD multiple times.
Oh, okay. So he was actually on acid.
So he was actually on acid when he made this movie too.
Love it.
But it is certainly an experience of a movie. It has probably one of the best endings. I know I've talked about the endings to all three of these movies. Holy Mountain has easily one of the best movie endings, just like of all time. It's such a, like, thematically speaking, because when you watch the movie, you're like, none of this makes any sense. And then when you think about it thematically, about, what is mentally blocking you from perceiving reality, whether it's greed or drugs or love or anything like that, once you look at it from that perspective, you're just like, that is like the balls of that man to just be like, zoom back camera and show, we're on a film set, you guys. Turns out this isn't real either. And I'm just like, my guy, real. What are you doing? Absolutely crazy. I can't say anything more about this movie because it is just
an experience.
And it's one of those, it is a love or hate it movie for sure. In like the purest sense, you will either watch the entire movie or you will watch 2 minutes and not go
just
further.
hate it.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure. If you're interested in watching some, because here's the thing too, these kind of movies are, for me, these are the turn your brain off movies. These are one where it's like, I got no idea what's going on, so I'm just gonna turn my brain off and just watch it. That to me is what that is. So I love stuff like that. Even if you can walk away with it and be like you can walk away from this movie and be like, well, yeah, I understood all the symbolism. I knew exactly what he was talking about. Or you can walk away and be like, that was just fun to watch the random, regardless. Or you can walk away and be like, that was stupid. Didn't make any sense. I didn't get it. What have you. It has to be seen to be believed. So regardless.
Where can folks watch this movie?
I watched it on Amazon. I actually also think that it's on Criterion Collection.
Also on Criterion. Well. Shout out Criterion.
Or
but
Mubi.
Not Amazon. We don't shout out Amazon on this podcast. Unless you want to sponsor us. I don't think you need to, but
yeah. There's not much. This is also, nice. This is definitely an experience of a movie for sure. There's nothing else like this movie at all whatsoever. David Lynch doesn't even come close to doing stuff like this. No. Like David Lynch, it's like he's surreal, but it just feels like he's just being surreal because he's a dickhead. Hodorowski, he's at least like, he's trying to say something. You know that he's trying to at least he has the earnestness to say, I'm trying to make a comment.
To have reason.
We live, like, even if it's cringe to say we live in a society, I would take that over not saying anything at all. So there you go. That's my rant.
He's a dickhead.
I don't like David Lynch movies. That's just, what can
I don't think I've ever seen a David Lynch movie. I don't think I ever want
to. You can
to.
keep it that way.
I'm being honest. All right. So 2022 is upon us. Every movie that was going to come out the last 2 years has been pushed back. It feels like to this year.
It's probably still going to be pushed back.
So with that being said, let's take 5 minutes. What movies are you most looking forward to watching in 2022?
Well, there's The Batman, which comes out February.
Are you excited to see that one?
I am very excited.
You're a huge Batman fan.
Well, says the guy.
Considering you bought $40.
All right, look.
Okay, no. You're a comic book.
I'm just
Batman
a comic.
I just like the Dark Knight.
Yeah,
there's a big difference.
The Dark Knight. I actually read the comics.
Yeah.
So I'm more of a true fan.
Yeah.
No, I'm excited about it because it's a time in Batman's chronology that I really enjoy, which is his early years.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. And I think I said this too. I think I said it to you, but I don't think I said it on camera. But it looked visually like the most compelling Batman movie we've had. It looked like it would like stylistically be one of the more.
Well, it looks like Gotham is an actual character, right? Because
most likely,
like the Tim Burton's ones are just wacky, just for this because it's Tim Burton wackiness.
Yeah,
you know, and the Nolan ones are real life cities, so it's hard to not be like, oh, that's Pittsburgh, that's Chicago. You know, this one it looks like an actual breathing city that it's its own like just environment, which. I think that's what I'm most excited. It's just a Gotham that's actually Gotham for the first time in a while. Because even the Zack Snyder Justice League and Batman vs Superman, it doesn't. You don't feel
you don't
like
really
you're
see
in
the
Gotham.
cities.
Yeah. So it doesn't feel. There's nothing there. There's nothing tangible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
What about you? I know what you're gonna say.
What am I gonna say?
You're gonna say The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Oh yeah, of course.
That's
of course. No, I'm actually more excited to see the 355.
Shut up.
No, Top Gun is probably at the top of my list. We've been waiting for this movie since 2020. Yeah,
you have been waiting for this movie.
I've been waiting since 2020. My dad has been waiting since 2020. So that's probably the one that I'm probably most excited to see. Hopefully it finally comes out. It's been delayed like 6 times already. Yeah. Death on the Nile. Excuse me.
Did you see
the Agatha Christie?
Did you see the Kenneth
I did not,
Murder?
but I do
want.
want. I don't know because I heard mixed reviews about it. I'll probably see it just for the lead up of Death on the Nile. Death on the Nile. Sorry. But I did read this book. We read it in English class.
Oh really?
One of my middle school years. I forgot which one. So it'll be cool to see that. Yeah, I enjoy a good mystery.
The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
No, we're not gonna talk about that one. Like I said, Nicolas Cage is a good actor when he's given good material.
Do you think Avatar 2 is gonna come out this year?
Is Avatar 2 even a thing anymore?
It's listed here as they.
Remember when it was supposed to come out in 2018, 2016? It was supposed to come out with Endgame.
Yep.
And it just hasn't.
It just didn't.
When is it scheduled to come out? Does it say?
I think like
December 2020.
Yeah,
it's not coming out.
They're giving themselves so much time.
It's not coming out in 2022. It might never come out. It might. It's a money laundering scheme. Let's be real.
Now that's a theory I haven't heard yet.
There's like 5 of these slated and are being filmed at the same time. There's no way they're not real.
You don't think so? Have you heard about the Gal Gadot Cleopatra?
No, but I'm interested.
I've heard about it on Twitter because so many people have been making fun of it. It's, I think, supposed to come out.
But why? She's actually Middle Eastern.
What they're making fun of it for is that so many of the headlines are saying stuff like, this Cleopatra is going to be sexy, it's beautiful. And people are like
Rebecca Taylor wasn't sexy and beautiful?
Dang, time to throw out my ugly Cleopatra script.
What the hell? I think it was Rebecca Taylor, right? Who was it?
Elizabeth Taylor.
Excuse me. I don't know why I was thinking of Rebecca. Elizabeth Taylor. But, Elizabeth Taylor is not beautiful?
So many people have it just making fun of that.
Have you seen the original?
No, because it's like 4 hours long.
Yeah. It's gonna do that. I need to watch that one, Ben-Hur and
Ben-Hur's a good one.
Lawrence of Arabia. But
that's
like
also
6 hours long.
Dude, Lawrence of Arabia is totally worth it.
Filmmakers, why did you make a movie so long?
Why did you have creative freedom?
All right, now let's talk about movies you want to watch in 2022. I'll start.
Okay.
The Linklater Before trilogy is
at the
top of my list, and it's gonna happen. I just need to find them.
They're at Barnes & Noble on Criterion.
But Criterion's like $30.
Shout out to Criterion.
$30.
Also, it's the entire trilogy, so it's actually more like $70. Probably, yeah.
I mean, I know I can rent it on Amazon, but I actually want to watch it. I don't know. I don't like paying $4 to watch a movie for 12 hours.
Fair enough, yeah.
It's like I'd rather just watch it on a streaming service or buy it outright.
One that came to my mind that I actually thinking of today was Pink Floyd's The Wall. I'm a big Pink Floyd fan. Even though that's not my favorite Pink Floyd album.
Yeah.
Just because I was thinking about The Holy Mountain because it was on this list, and that's a movie that is very similarly very symbolic So
It's a good
I
one.
think that's an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know a lot about the nostalgia critics, The Wall.
Now, is it a documentary or is it a biopic?
So it is actually, well, okay. If you want the whole history,
Give me the condensed version.
it is a semi-autobiographical
Is it like Senna
story.
or is it like Schumacher?
It's not even a documentary. It is like a semi-autobiographical version of
Oh, okay.
one of the Pink Floyd member, Roger Waters, or
Yeah.
the ex-Pink Floyd member. It's like inspired by his life growing up in post-World War II Europe, or post-World War II England specifically, and how like just society influenced and very negatively influenced him, and as well as how British society as a whole is just a dumpster fire for some reason, for no reason. What are you guys doing with Boris Johnson? What? But
Shout out to that trash pile.
it's
in the
an
middle of the
album
Atlantic.
that is like, that's the story of the album, and then they turn that into a movie with where the album is the soundtrack.
That sounds interesting.
So I would be very interested to watch that because
Yeah,
I
that
like
sounds-
animation, and it's mostly animated, so I appreciate that
Thanks.
for sure.
Sweet.
For sure.
Shout out Pink Floyd. A lot of shout outs this episode.
I know, right? So many shoutouts.
Any others?
If I knew you were gonna ask this question, I would.
No, I like
more.
imposing questions on you.
You like just
yeah.
drop
It makes it
mine a little.
more, you know.
Let me go to my watch list. Let's see what I have added to here right now.
Are we excited to see the new Uncharted movie?
No.
Hollywood, stop making Mark Wahlberg a thing.
Mark Wahlberg.
Please.
Shout out to that guy. No, I just
I think that's really it for me. I mean, I'm sure there's some movie that's going to be surprise release
Yeah.
in 2022.
Anything from A24 Pictures, pretty much. Who knows what they're
That
gonna
I'll be
release.
like, yeah, I'll go watch that.
Yeah.
As
Like-
far as like stuff that's already announced,
Mhm.
that's
There's
really
really
it for
not
me.
much. We're just at the beginning of the year.
Batman and
Yeah.
I mean everybody knows all the good movies don't come out till
The end of the year.
summer
Yeah.
and onwards. So
Yeah. Cats 2.
whoa, another Halloween's movie? What the hell?
Oh, God dang it.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 2?
That'll be interesting as long as it's the same people behind it. Cause
I think it is. Yeah, it's the
That's
same
good.
director and writers, I think.
Nice.
Anyways. Any last words before we get out of here?
How would you rate 2021 as a year for movies?
Not good.
Nope.
No, not in terms of new movies, not good.
Yeah.
Nothing really came out of substance after 2020 or after August,
Yeah.
really.
Or before August, more or less. Because after August, you got the James Bonds.
Yeah, yeah.
You had the French
exactly.
Dispatches,
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that.
So it was a really, really dry year. All of the big name guys didn't really come out with stuff other than Denny and PTA. I guess Wes Anderson, but I'm not a Wes Anderson fan, so what can you say? I just offended like 3 people.
One of them is my sister. Shout out to you.
I'm sure he makes good movies. I just have no interest in seeing them.
I'd give it like a D.
Yeah, I would say the same. Honestly, yeah, I would say just because the only movies, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Dune and Bond saved it for me. And Licorice Pizza, but I didn't even know Licorice Pizza was coming out until
Like a week beforehand. Yeah. And then we didn't even see it. Wait, we did see it in 2021, didn't we?
No, we saw it after.
We saw it after?
It was after the New Year. So it'll
But it
make our
counts.
2022 list.
It makes both years. Yeah.
It will definitely make 2022.
Regardless.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Shout out Ozark season 4 part 1.
Shout out to the Abu Dhabi Formula One. I don't think we ever talked about that. It's been
Bringing
a
it up a
while.
whole month and a half later.
been a month, but we
Preseason
never
testing's a
talked
month
about it.
away, and we're
Yep.
talking about Abu Dhabi still.
Shout out to the baseball lockout.
Shout out to the baseball lockout. Shout out to the NFL playoffs happening right now. Shout out
And,
to.
Yeah.
All right, that's about it. See you guys later. Thanks for tuning in next week. We'll think of something to talk about next week. You guys will be the first one to know about it. So.